Credit cards made life incredibly convenient. But what if that same convenience is quietly making it harder to build wealth? The system that lets you buy now and pay later may be the exact reason so many people stay financially stuck. A strange thing has happened to modern money. People today can buy almost anything instantly: flights, phones, furniture, clothes, groceries, all without having the money. And yet, despite higher salaries, better technology, and easier payments than any generation before, millions of people in the United States and Europe still feel financially stuck. So here's the uncomfortable question. Did credit cards actually make life easier or just make wealth harder to build? Imagine a typical young professional. Let's say someone living in Chicago, London, or Toronto. They're 27 years old. They have a stable job. Their salary is around $70,000 a year. Sounds comfortable, but after taxes, that becomes roughly $4,000 per month in take-home pay. Now look at where that money goes. Rent or mortgage, $1,600. Car payment and insurance, $600. Student loan payment, $350. Utilities, internet, phone, $250. Groceries, $400. Already about $3,200 is gone. That leaves $800 for everything else: restaurants, clothes, travel, subscriptions, emergencies, social life. And this is where credit cards quietly enter the picture. At first, credit cards feel like a convenience. You swipe now, you pay later. Maybe you buy a new phone for $1,200, or book a $900 vacation, or slowly accumulate small lifestyle purchases: $40 dinners, $80 online orders, $120 weekends out. Individually, none of these feel like major decisions, but credit cards change something subtle in the psychology of spending. They separate the moment of enjoyment from the moment of payment. And when those two moments are separated, people spend more. Not because they're irresponsible, but because the brain reacts differently to delayed consequences. Now let's look at the math most people never calculate. Suppose someone carries an average $5,000 credit card balance. The interest rate is around 22%, which is common today. That means roughly $1,100 per year goes only toward interest, not reducing the balance, not building wealth, just paying for the privilege of having spent money earlier. Over 10 years, that's more than $11,000, and that's assuming the balance never grows. But for many people, it does. The real problem isn't that credit cards exist. The problem is how quietly they normalize future spending. In previous generations, spending was limited by physical money. If you didn't have the cash, you waited. Today, waiting feels unnecessary. The system encourages immediacy. Buy now, upgrade now, experience life now. And slowly, without noticing, people begin financing their lifestyle instead of building their wealth. This creates a subtle financial trap. A person might earn a solid income. They might even get regular raises. But because expenses expand through easy credit, their financial position barely improves. Higher income simply supports higher spending, and the credit card balance remains somewhere in the background, never catastrophic, but never disappearing. Financially intelligent people often behave very differently. Not because they earn dramatically more, but because they treat credit cards as a payment tool, not a financial tool. To them, a credit card is just a delayed debit card. If they don't already have the money in their bank account, the purchase doesn't happen. This removes the psychological trick entirely. Spending becomes intentional again, not automatic. And something interesting happens when people return to that mindset. Purchases slow down. Not because life becomes restrictive, but because the brain reconnects spending with actual money leaving. A $900 vacation stops being a number on a statement and becomes 3 weeks of groceries. A $1,200 phone becomes 3 months of investing. The trade-offs become visible again, and visible trade-offs create better decisions. Credit cards didn't destroy wealth, but they did change how easily people can drift away from it. Not through one big mistake, but through hundreds of small, comfortable ones. And the system is designed to make those small decisions feel harmless. Understanding this doesn't require extreme discipline, it just requires awareness. Because once you see how the system works, it becomes much easier to step outside of it. But the story doesn't really stop at interest rates. Because the real influence of credit cards is not just financial, it's behavioral. Over time, credit cards slowly reshape how people define what a normal lifestyle looks like. And this is where things become more complicated. Think about the average social environment of a young professional. Friends are traveling, coworkers are upgrading their phones, people on social media are posting photos from restaurants, weekend trips, concerts, and shopping. Individually, none of these activities are unusual, they are simply part of modern life. But when credit cards make every experience instantly accessible, the pressure to keep up becomes easier to act on. You don't need the money today, you just need the credit limit. And so the lifestyle grows slightly faster than the income, not dramatically, just enough to keep finances tight. Let's go back to our example. The young professional earning $70,000 a year. Their monthly leftover cash was about $800 after fixed expenses. Now, imagine they regularly place about $600 to $900 of lifestyle spending on a credit card. Restaurants, clothing, travel deposits, online purchases. At the end of the month, the statement arrives. Maybe the balance is $2,300, but the minimum payment might only be $70 or $80. Psychologically, that feels manageable. And that's exactly how the system is designed. Minimum payments make a large debt feel like a small obligation. But the math tells a different story. If someone carries a $2,300 balance with a 22% interest rate and only makes minimum payments, the repayment timeline can stretch for years. What started as a few normal lifestyle purchases quietly transforms into long-term debt. The person may barely remember what they originally bought, but they're still paying for it, month after month. And this is where many people become confused about their financial situation. They feel like they're doing everything correctly. They have a job, they pay their bills, they aren't making reckless purchases, but wealth still doesn't seem to grow. Savings remain small. Investments never quite get started. Financial progress feels slow. The reason is often simple. A portion of their income is permanently redirected toward past consumption instead of building assets, instead of compounding over time. It's going toward interest payments on things that have already been used, worn out, or forgotten. And the opportunity cost of that money becomes significant over time. Let's imagine something small. Instead of paying $300 per month toward credit card interest and balances, someone invests that same amount. Nothing aggressive, just a broad market investment earning around 7% annually, which is historically reasonable over long periods. After 10 years, that $300 per month could grow to roughly $52,000. After 20 years, it could reach more than $150,000. And after 30 years, it moves toward $350,000. Not through extraordinary returns, just through time and consistency. The difference between these two paths isn't intelligence, and it isn't income. It's simply direction. One path sends money toward past spending, the other sends money toward future ownership. This is why financially stable people often appear unusually calm about consumption. They don't rush to upgrade everything. They don't automatically say yes to every purchase opportunity. From the outside, it might look like restraint, but internally, it's just a different mental equation. When they see a purchase, they don't only see the price, they see the future value of that money. A $1,000 purchase isn't just $1,000. Over 25 years, that same money could potentially become $5,000 or more if invested. Once someone begins thinking this way, spending decisions naturally slow down, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Credit cards, however, interrupt this clarity. They shrink financial decisions down to one small number. What is the monthly payment? And monthly thinking is dangerous for long-term wealth, because wealth is built through decades of decisions, not months. Another subtle effect of credit cards is how they hide financial stress. Someone may technically be able to afford their lifestyle, only because part of it is constantly rolling on credit. Balances rise and fall, statements are paid down then rebuilt again. From the outside, everything looks stable, but underneath, the financial system is always slightly strained. And over time, that strain prevents real wealth accumulation. Financially intelligent people try to avoid that invisible tension, not by eliminating credit cards completely, but by removing their power. The rule becomes simple. If the money already exists in the bank account, the card can be used. If the money doesn't exist yet, the purchase waits. That small boundary changes everything because it restores the original relationship between spending and earning. When people follow this approach long enough, something interesting happens. Their financial life becomes quieter. Fewer surprise bills, fewer lingering balances, less mental energy spent thinking about money problems. And slowly, the direction of money begins to change. Instead of flowing toward lenders, it begins flowing toward investments, savings, and ownership. Credit cards didn't create financial struggle, but they did make it easier to live slightly beyond reality for long periods of time. And that small difference, repeated across years, becomes enormous. Not because of one big decision, but because of thousands of ordinary ones. Understanding this doesn't mean rejecting modern financial tools. It simply means using them with awareness. Because convenience is powerful, but convenience can also quietly change behavior. And sometimes the smartest financial move isn't complicated. It's just slowing down the moment between wanting something and buying it. There is another layer to this story that often goes unnoticed. Credit cards did not just change spending. They changed the timing of life itself. In previous decades, many purchases required waiting. A family might save for months before buying furniture. A young professional might keep the same phone for 4 or 5 years. Vacations were planned around available savings, not available credit. Waiting was normal, not because people were more disciplined, but because the financial system required it. Today, the waiting period has almost disappeared. Almost everything can be financed. Phones come with monthly upgrade plans. Travel can be booked with one click. Online stores offer instant payment options, and credit cards quietly fill the gap whenever cash runs short. This creates a strange situation. People are experiencing future lifestyles earlier than their finances are ready for, and the cost of that acceleration is usually interest. Consider another example. A 30-year-old professional decides to furnish a new apartment. They buy a sofa for $1,200, a bed for $1,800, and electronics for $1,000. Altogether, that's $4,000. With a credit card, the purchase happens instantly. The apartment looks complete. Life feels established. But if that balance sits on a card charging 20 to 24% interest, the real cost could easily reach $5,000 or more over time. The furniture didn't become more valuable, but the price quietly grew. This pattern repeats across many parts of modern life. A $900 vacation becomes $1,200 after interest. A $1,200 phone becomes $1,500. A few $1,000s of convenience slowly transforms into years of financial drag. And again, none of this feels dramatic in the moment, because credit cards are designed to make spending feel smooth and frictionless. Behavioral economists often talk about something called payment pain. This is the small emotional discomfort people feel when money leaves their possession. When someone pays with cash, the payment pain is immediate. They physically see the money disappear. With credit cards, that sensation is delayed. The purchase happens today. The payment arrives weeks later. By the time the bill appears, the excitement of the purchase is already gone. And that separation changes behavior. People simply spend more when payment pain is delayed, not because they lack intelligence, but because the brain responds differently. This is one reason why companies strongly encourage card payments. Restaurants, airlines, online stores, and subscription services all benefit when spending feels effortless. The smoother the transaction, the less the brain pauses to question it. And when millions of small decisions happen without pause, total spending rises dramatically. Over time, this creates a financial pattern that many middle-class households experience. Income rises slowly, expenses rise quickly, savings grow inconsistently, and debt never fully disappears. From the outside, life still looks successful. Nice apartment, reliable car, occasional travel. But financially, the margin between income and obligation remains thin. The difficulty is that this pattern often feels normal. When most people around you are living the same way, it doesn't appear risky, it appears standard. And because credit cards allow the system to function smoothly, the underlying fragility stays hidden. Until something unexpected happens. A job change, a medical bill, an economic downturn. Suddenly, the credit card balance that once felt manageable becomes a serious burden. Not because of one bad decision, but because the margin of safety was always small. Financially intelligent people try to build that margin deliberately, not through extreme frugality, but through a simple shift in priorities. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this monthly payment?" they ask a different question. What does this purchase delay in my future? Because every dollar spent today has an alternative future use. It could reduce debt, it could grow in investments, it could increase financial flexibility. Once someone starts thinking in terms of trade-offs, spending becomes clearer. For example, imagine someone considering a $2,000 purchase, maybe a new laptop, luxury item, or travel experience. Instead of only seeing the object, they also see the alternative. If that $2,000 were invested and allowed to grow for 25 years at about 7% annually, it could become more than $10,000. That doesn't mean the purchase is wrong. Sometimes experiences and useful items are worth the cost. But seeing both sides of the equation creates a more thoughtful decision. Credit cards tend to hide that second side. They show the object, they hide the future value. Another quiet effect of credit cards is something psychologists call lifestyle anchoring. Once people become accustomed to a certain lifestyle level, it becomes difficult to step backwards, even if finances require it. Someone who regularly spends $300 per month eating out may feel restricted if they reduce that to $100, even though both levels are technically comfortable. Credit cards allow lifestyles to rise quickly, but reducing them later can feel emotionally difficult, and that's why many people continue carrying balances. Not because they want debt, but because adjusting the lifestyle downward feels uncomfortable. Financial stability often comes from avoiding that upward drift in the first place. Instead of letting spending expand automatically, financially careful people expand it slowly. They allow income growth to outpace lifestyle growth. This creates surplus, and surplus eventually becomes wealth. The difference between these two financial lives is rarely dramatic at first. Two people might earn similar salaries, live in similar apartments, drive similar cars, but one slowly accumulates assets, the other slowly accumulates obligations. 10 years later, their situations look completely different, and the original cause might have been nothing more than how each person used their credit cards. Credit cards themselves are not inherently harmful. They can be useful tools. They provide convenience, fraud protection, and short-term flexibility. But tools shape behavior, and when a tool makes spending easier than thinking, it can quietly influence long-term outcomes. The real challenge is not eliminating credit cards, it's preventing them from controlling your money. When spending remains intentional, credit cards simply process transactions. When spending becomes automatic, credit cards start shaping financial life. Most people never sit down and consciously choose the second path. It simply develops over time, small purchase by small purchase, month by month, statement by statement. But once someone recognizes how the system works, the dynamic becomes easier to manage because awareness restores the missing pause between desire and decision. And that small pause can completely change the financial future.